77 years, is because there is no international nudging, no international pressure. The UK government says that we want them to resolve it. And obviously, they don't want to resolve it because that's not what their agenda is completely different. We have serious issues in terms of what's happening on the ground. Nadeem already mentioned the oppression and the suppression via the military and the security forces on both sides of Kashmir. But it is rather heart-rending to see what the Labour policy is. Labour's now in government, and the policy on Gaza is really very, very seriously flawed. But if we come to it, Debbie said that Kashmir is nowhere on the international agenda. How can we put Kashmir on the international agenda? And the starting point is here, this parliament. Our Kashmir, friends of Kashmir in both houses have been very vocal, and we're very grateful for this. So the question that Nadeem had brought to the table was, is an independent secular J&K solution to the problem that we've had in prosperity in South Asia? So I think the answer really is a definite yes. There was a Chatham House report a few years back. They did a survey on what the people of Kashmir wanted. The problem we've got is that India thinks everyone in Kashmir works for Pakistan, and that's why they are prepared to go to every length. The imprisonment, the tortures, the mass, extrajudicial killings. There are horror stories of the kind that you're mostly, or if you're familiar with Kashmir, that you will know about. Currently, there are several thousand Kashmiri prisoners in Indian jails. Most of their families have been victimized in the sense that if they family relatives had any jobs in government offices, they've all been dismissed. They're all been watched, scrutinized by the Indian agencies. And the similar stories happening on the Pakistani side. We call it Azad Kashmir, but believe me, it's nowhere near Azad, that territory under Pakistani occupation. And there is the difference in that there are lots of Pakistani politicians who are very, very, very well receptive to the idea of independent Kashmir. The problem we've got is that the Pakistani government and the Pakistan is basically ruled by the army establishment, and they are not there to resolve military conflicts. They are there one of their agenda seems to be is the getting even with India in terms of what happened with East Pakistan, which became Bangladesh. So the Pakistani army haven't forgotten that, and unfortunately they're using Kashmir to get even with India. And the international community isn't paying any attention to that at all. In terms of the resolution that we think that the way to come to that resolution would be one, the UN route. But David mentioned about the UN human rights reports. Nothing came out of that. India and Pakistan still carried on with, despite the fact that the Human Rights Commissioner went on a press conference to say enough is enough, it has to stop. But it didn't stop. It's because the UN has been rendered useless, unfortunately, as we can see what's happening in Gaza and Lebanon. One of our maybe tools is David Lammy. David is now, Labour is in power, and Labour historically has a responsibility on Kashmir. And David Lammy is one of the ways to put that pressure on. As I said about the Foreign Affairs Select Committee that our members of parliament ought to push for, maybe jointly through the APPG, or maybe have a sitting or meeting with David to see what he can do in terms of both moving it forward on the UN agenda and moving it forward in terms of bilateral issues between India and Pakistan. And then we've got this resolution that we've drafted that we think that should be put in the House, and we will get the UK MPs, all party MPs, to sign to support for this. That would be a good starting point. I also wanted to bring to your attention, I wrote a paper. I'm not just a UK JKLF General Secretary. I'm a researcher for an international NGO, and I wrote a research paper on the case of Kashmiri leader Yasin Malik. You've probably seen it. Yes. in Leeds. So there are a number of issues in terms of how they're proceeding with that case. And you need to really read this paper to see how difficult it is for anyone in India to fight on the legal ground. Fighting in terms of political issues is one thing. So lots of people talk about, okay, they've had an assembly elections, but people on ground will tell you that those puppets that have been elected in the Kashmir Assembly are powerless, and they're only there to rubber stamp. And if any one of them, like it happened in 2019, if any one of them went out, out of their line, and they would be imprisoned.